It is time for another edition of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, I'm Jason Floyd. That is the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. here to talk about UFC Nashville goes down on Saturday. Lock time on Saturday. Currently, as we sit here, I think, Pete, we always have to say that. Currently, as we sit here, lock time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Main card is going to be at 9 p.m. Eastern time. The entire fight card will be on ESPN and ESPN Plus. We've got a couple heavyweight matchups on this card, most notably in the main event of Derrick Lewis coming back after some time away. Takes on Tallison Teixeira. Co-main event, we got a return of one boy, Stephen Thompson, taking on Gabriel Bonfim. Got to a couple of potential banger fights on this card as well. So, Pete, I don't know about you, man. I mean, after not having a UFC card last week, I'm jacked up to watch some fights on Saturday.
Yeah, a week off is sometimes awesome, but at the same time, I feel lost, right? Like I'm so involved in this sport one way or another. I do love kicking back on the couch, watching MMA. If I can make money while watching MMA, that's amazing. If I can chase the big tournaments, that's even better. You know what I mean? And then obviously doing the show with one of my best friends, Jason Floyd, is a plus. Talking to the community is a plus. I don't know, it's just a part of what we do, and maybe we do get spoiled, and eventually we'll have unbelievable cards every single week, but some fights are better than no fights. You know what I mean? It is low level, but if we could ever start doing DFS or something for Dana White Contender Series, or I love when the Contender Series is around for betting purposes, but I am happy that we are back, and then we're on this week's a decent card, and then we have an excellent card coming up with Dustin Poirier and Max Holloway, which I'm very, very interested to hear your take on some of those fights eventually, and obviously watch that fight.
Of course, coming on off the last card, UFC 317, just a banger of a card. All those fights just absolutely delivering. We had two quick bonuses on that card, which is something that we rarely see in this sport. So hopefully it was a profitable weekend for everyone. Of course, if you got any questions about the fights, all you gotta do is leave those in the chat, whether you do it right here on YouTube if you're watching us live, or if you want to hit us up in Discord, you can do that. I know some questions have already come in Discord. Speaking about some of the things that we have going on here at Fight HQ, of course, you can become a member of Pete's Patreon page. Pete, let everyone know about your Patreon page. What's going on over there?
Yeah, so on the Patreon page, I put out some data for everybody that puts out projections. In addition to the fighter projections, it has the strength of schedule for each fighter, and then deeper than that, it has the strength of their wins. Are they beating people from the crowd? Are they beating title contenders? And then what everybody seems to love more than anything, and I think I love it more than my projections even, is the fighter's pace rating. I have a pace rating attached to each fighter, and it seems like people that are going and really just trusting in the pace rating are having a ton of success. And then in addition to that fighter's pace, I have the fight pace. So it's the combined pace rating from fighter A and fighter B to show you maybe this fight's going to deliver, a little bit better than expectations. Maybe it's going to be a high paced fight, especially if it's a flyweight bout. Is there a low volume fighter attached to that fight? You can see the differences there. I'm looking to continue to add stuff to it, but a ton of people that belong to the Patreon, I want to say thank you. And they seem to really enjoy everything that I'm putting out. And that's my goal, to put out some more data to help you guys hopefully win some money or understand the sport and understand some matchups better. So yes, you can click that link in the bio. Appreciate you always, Jason, mentioning the Patreon, and appreciate everybody tuning into our show per fight card here on Fight HQ. If you can hit that like button, get us over 100 likes, that would go a long way and help us reach our next goal of 2,000 subscribers.
Yeah, I want to say we're about a stretch of, I think it's 8 straight weeks of UFC and Dana White Contender Series cards. Also, PFL's got one of their bigger events coming up next weekend. Johnny Eblen headlining that card. Also, Dakota Teixeira on that card as well. So, a lot of things going on in this crazy world of mixed martial arts. Hell, if you would have told me 2 weeks ago we talking about the UFC's doing logistics of how they could do a fight card at the White House, this sport, man, this sport.
This sport's crazy, bro, and I'm here for it. I'm here for the White House card. I'm totally here for that. And then, just to touch on PFL, I'm never trying to throw shade at certain things, but not too many people are more involved in this sport than me, from the gym aspect, from competition aspect, from a podcast and betting standpoint. Like, I'm pretty involved. It's pretty bad when I don't know PFL has cards coming up. Like, I did not know they had a card last week unless I saw your messages late in the Fight HQ Discord. I had no idea. Like I mean, I know that they did some changes today or the past week, that they've added somebody or that somebody stepped down in PFL, but I don't know. It's kind of crazy that somebody like me, a hardcore, does not know what the hell's going on in one of the major promotions in the world.
Yeah, they I want to say it's a new CFO guy coming over from Turner. I think in terms of what we see on Fight Night, that's not really anything, we're going to sit there and rave about. But we are here to talk about UFC Nashville, of course, goes down on Saturday, and talk a little about DFF's game theory here. I mean, Pete, the first thing that ultimately I think sticks out to you is that, yes, we have a 12-fight card, but the fact is that we have 7 fighters in the 9,000 range. We have more fighters in the 9,000 range than we have in the 8,000 range. We have 6 fighters who are at least a -300 or better favorite. In fact, 4 of those 6 are 7-1 betting favorites. You want to talk about just kind of an odd slate that we have here on Saturday is the fact of we have one fighter at 9,900, another fighter at 9,800, another fighter at 9,600, and another fighter at 9,500. I don't think I've ever seen this.
It's just getting stranger and stranger. The odds attached to this sport make no damn sense. Maybe just the public is just smashing the opening lines into oblivion, and then when the odds settle, we're stuck with like untouchable price tags, like -1,200 Fatima Kline, crazy. Women's MMA, -900 Mike Davis, insane. -650 against Lauren Murphy is Eduarda Moura. You know what I mean? Like Chris Curtis in a matchup he should win in a striker's delight is -310. Like it's becoming Bellator odds over here when it comes to like some of these fight cards, and it's like, all right, a little difficult to navigate through the DFS landscape because like from betting, you're betting winning methods or you're betting overs and unders. So like we can make do and figure out ways to make profit. I'm not laying -1,200 on Fatima Kline. I'm going to figure out a different way to make money on that fight. The +3.5, -3.5, excellent way to essentially the spread of an MMA fight. Essentially a way to chop the odds down to help you get better odds per your dollar. But yeah, Jason, man, it's crazy of like how each week we're seeing, I don't remember for the longest time ever seeing 9,900 fighters. And then back-to-back weeks or 2 of the 3 weeks, we've seen 9,900, 9,800, and it's becoming normal. Like it is what it is, right? And some of these matchups are not nearly as competitive as they should be given the UFC landscape and the UFC roster. But here we are. We got to figure out who's going to bust at some of these 9,000 price tags and who's going to perform decently well.
Yeah, I mean, I even think about you think about the height of Valentina Shevchenko. I don't even think she hit 9,900.
That's what I'm saying.
In terms of some of those crazy numbers there. And, when I was just kind of like, I went over the DraftKings. I'm like, let me just kind of just start to put a line together, because one of the things that I text Pete earlier today is I think the dogs are going to be barking on this fight card. And to me, it's not really I think in terms of roster construction, depending on which underdogs you do like, I think that it's fairly kind of easy. And I found myself with the ability to get to some of these higher 9,000 options just because of, some of the fighters in that 7,000 range that do stick out to me. I will tell you, there are 2 fighters in the 6K range that I don't mind rostering. One of them, is the fantasy score ceiling high? Maybe not, because they're a striker. The other one is straight up low heavyweight action that, you're not going to feel great rostering a 6,600 Austen Lane, but it's low level heavyweight action.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna hear me break down some of these fights, and it's like, okay, we have some ranked fighters. Like, for instance, we still have Stephen Thompson, a part of the top 15. Like, he is a legitimate ranked welterweight. And yes, he's fallen from grace and he's not in his prime, but he is at that gatekeeper type of position where the UFC is going to test him with up and coming fighters to prove if they're legitimate or not. But seeing him at plus 300 it's crazy. It's just recency bias. I mean, like Calvin Kattar, a guy that I thought was, on his way to being in the top 10 for a very long time, is now fighting for his job, as you and I talked about pre-show. It's crazy because, like, he's on a 4-fight skid. I wouldn't have thought that. Obviously, injuries are a real thing. Momentum is a real thing as well in this game. And the best fighters don't always win. And confidence is something that we can't put our finger on either. And once a fighter is so used to winning and then they suffer defeats, some fighters cannot deal with that, right? Like some guys, like let's say Morgan Charriere, for instance, has lost a ton of decisions, but he's taken something from each of those losses to make him a better mixed martial artist. Whereas somebody who's undefeated, like Gabriel Bonfim was undefeated for a while. When he got fraud checked, if you will, from Nicholas Dalby, I was hesitant. I was very, very hesitant to pick him again. You know what I mean? Because like you just don't know how an undefeated fighter is going to respond to their first defeat or from losing multiple fights. So it's just odd to see where some of these fighters are at within their career. And it just proves, man, MMA is it's a very tough sport. And like, it's brutal. You can give your all to this game and it just does not give it back to you. And that's just life, right? Like you just got to roll with the punches.
Look, not everyone is Khabib Nurmagomedov. Not everyone is George St. Pierre. The reality is, and I'm sure we're probably going to talk about this next week to Dustin Poirier, this is a brutal sport, and it doesn't show you the love back that the love you gave the sport when ultimately the last time you lace everything up. I mean, it's an absolutely brutal sport, but we'll talk about it here because we do have some older fighters of part of this fight card that do make you really wonder, could we maybe see some fighters hang up the gloves following UFC Nashville? Let's get right into the main event. It is a heavyweight match. We got Derrick Lewis taking on Tallison Teixeira. Teixeira, a minus 270 betting favorite in this one. The Black Beast plus 220. He's 7,200 on DraftKings, $15 on FanDuel. Teixeira, 9,000 on DraftKings and $22 on FanDuel. We have not seen Derrick Lewis since May of 2024. That was 14 months ago. Here's kind of a really crazy stat for you, Pete. Derrick Lewis, I mean, this is a guy that's been a part of this heavyweight division for a long time. He's seeking back-to-back wins for the first time since 2020. It is 2025. Just an absolute crazy. 3-5 since 2021. You look at Teixeira on the other side. Massive. I mean, I in my notes here, I wrote in all caps, massive step up in competition. Won his UFC debut against Justin Tafa, who we're going to, we're talking about his brother here later on in the show. Prior to that, he won on the Contender Series against Arthur Lopez. All of his MMA fights have ended in the first round. His longest fight was in his pro debut back in 2021. That lasted to the 4-minute and 40-second mark. And the talking points I really have for you, Pete, on this matchup is, A, could we potentially see Derrick Lewis go to Takedown City in this matchup? And on the other side, to me, it's the unknown of Tallison Teixeira of what happens if this fight hits the second round?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at things from a very black and white perspective, who the hell has Tallison Teixeira beat to be such a favorite, be a minus 260 favorite over Derrick Lewis, who has knocked out a ridiculous amount of heavyweights inside the UFC, has the most knockouts in all of the UFC. Like, it is insanely disrespectful for a newcomer, if you will, Tallison Teixeira, to come in here, be priced at 9,000, while Derrick Lewis is priced at 7,200. That's the black and white on paper approach. And if that's all you want to go by, I do not blame you for picking Derrick Lewis at all, because we've seen time and time again, newcomers, prospects break into the UFC and get tested way too early, and it's just too big of a step up in competition. I do think that this particular instance is different, though, because I do think that Tallison Teixeira is like the UFC's version of Renan Ferreira. I really do. I think that Renan Ferreira and Tallison Teixeira are similar. They are mammoths of human beings with crazy reach advantages over their opponent, height advantages. Tallison Teixeira has a significant youth advantage as well, and the power that they possess is ridiculous. Tallison Teixeira has a crazy right hand. I also think he doesn't hesitate at all. He's confident. You know, if you go back and you watch the Tafa fight, he threw a combination and almost looked like he was attempting a takedown, and I believe he was, even though the UFC didn't credit him with it, and pressed Tafa against the cage. And from there, it was the beginning of the end. Good knees to the body, followed up with an elbow to the face. Some people are saying the knee to the body was a little low. It could have been. It definitely could have been, but I liked what I saw from Tallison Teixeira. I do think that he could bully Derrick Lewis right against the cage. And we've seen Derrick Lewis, wilt under pressure numerous times, dig himself out of holes numerous times. But he's always been in a hole in multiple fights, and that does not get easier as you get older. I do think that Tallison Teixeira has a sneaky ground game to him that has not been displayed yet inside his MMA career. I really do. I think that this guy has the jiu-jitsu advantage over Derrick Lewis. I know that people can say, well, Derrick Lewis went 25 minutes with Jailton Almeida. This guy, Tallison Teixeira, is not going to submit him. I mean, you can't have that perspective. You cannot have that MMA math type of mindset because not every fight is the same. And I think a fight with somebody who has physical advantages over you in the height and reach department, 4 inches in height, 4 inches in reach, 14 years younger is Tallison Teixeira. The UFC is taking a gamble here by throwing a prospect at a wily veteran in Derrick Lewis and testing Teixeira so early. I mean, Jason, I don't blame anybody backing Derrick Lewis here. I think Tallison Teixeira, I think he knocks out Derrick Lewis. I really do. And if he doesn't knock out Derrick Lewis, I do see a sneaky situation where if it ends on the mat, Teixeira does have some solid BJJ skills to him to submit Derrick Lewis. Derrick Lewis is so low volume, it's hard to pick him here, right? Like if I'm looking at significant strikes landed per minute, granted, super small sample size for Tallison Teixeira, 14.61 significant strikes landed per minute for Tallison Teixeira, 2.48 for Derrick Lewis. Just to give you an insight into my pace rating, that's a 9.91 pace rating for Tallison Teixeira and 2.42 for Derrick Lewis. Just so you guys know, 2.42 on the pace rating metric is not good. But it doesn't have to be good if he can land that big right hand. And Tallison Teixeira has been hit on Dana White's Contender Series. Even on the regional scene, you see him getting hit and his chin holds up. But how does it hold up against Derrick Lewis, the guy with the most knockouts in the UFC? I just don't even think that Derrick Lewis is going to be able to touch him, truthfully. I think that Teixeira's length and his reach and his weapons are going to be too much for Derrick Lewis, and I could look completely silly here. And I'm totally fine with looking silly on heavyweight MMA. But every now and then we get some prospects that come in that just look different. And I think Tallison Teixeira is the guy that just looks different. I think he is similar to Renan Ferreira. I really do. And I think that he comes away with a knockout win. Now, granted, if this gets outside of round 1, outside of round 2, and even round 3, I'm live betting Derrick Lewis. I am. You know what I mean? And even if it gets outside of round 1, I probably would. But if I have to pick somebody, I'm going to pick Tallison Teixeira here. And I can completely understand if you're on the opposite side. So give me Tallison Teixeira here at 9,000 as a minus 260 favorite over Derrick Lewis. And I'll just hope that I'm correct. But heavyweight MMA, it does seem like a necessity for this DFS fight.
Look, I think I agree with you. I think from a DFS perspective, it's a fight you just have to prioritize. And, look, I'm very much with you. The fact of if this thing gets out of the first round, what is Derrick Lewis's live number on the betting side of this equation? I was just looking at our app here in Florida, the Hard Rock app, and looking at these total significant strikes landed. Call me crazy. I like the over 25.5 significant strikes on Tallison Teixeira. I don't think he gets Derrick Lewis out that quick. I really don't. I mean, hell, even Derrick Lewis, his total significant strikes landed is 17.5. I don't mind that one either. I mean, it's to me, it's got to be a fight you have to prioritize. I mean, look at some of the props. If you're looking to bet Tallison share, there's not a lot of great props out there. Let's just kind of what it is. But yeah, it to me, it is that question mark of, hey, is Tallison share ready for a veteran like Derrick Lewis? And always with Derrick Lewis, it's always of where's his body at? We know the physical toll that has happened on his body. Look, you got to have, if you're playing multi-entries on DraftKings or even on FanDuel, you got to have both sides of this fight. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be opposite. Underdog number one, Derrick Lewis for me. I think he gets the job done.
Really?
I think he's going to put Tallison share on his back, and I think we're going to see some massive ground and pound from Derrick Lewis. But we'll see whether I'm right or whether Pete's right. Well, hey, at least one of us will be right. At least one of us will be right.
Armbar or a triangle off I almost called it head of Ferreira, off of Tallison Teixeira's back, and it'd be like, really, Derrick Lewis?
Yeah, I mean that may be, if it's Teixeira, that may be about the best prop to find out there is maybe that submission prop there. Now our co-main event is in the welterweight division. It is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson taking on Gabriel Bonfim. Bonfim, a minus 450 betting favorite in this one, plus 325 for Wonderboy, who is $6,900 on DK, $11 on FanDuel. Bonfim, $9,300 on DraftKings. He is $20 on FanDuel. The last time we saw Wonderboy was back in October last year, a third-round TKO loss against Joaquin Buckley. He's only fought once a year since 2022. I thought that was one of the more interesting things when I was doing some deep diving there on Stephen Thompson. Gabriel Bonfim, he's coming off that second-round submission win back in February against Chaos Williams. 4-1 in the UFC. 3 of those 4 UFC wins have come via submission. It's on the Stephen Thompson side, do you trust a 42-year-old Wonderboy at this stage of his career? And on the other side, Pete, when you look at Gabriel Bonfim, the stat that's going to stick out to you is that takedown average per 15 minutes of fighting, which is 3.68.
Yeah, I mean, really compelling fight because I'm one of the biggest Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fans out there. Like, I mean, I love Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I've talked to him numerous times. I mean, he's congratulated me when I've kicked people in the body, and I've idolized this guy. So I can completely say that he's one of my favorite fighters, and I probably have some significant bias. I've been watching him since the World Combat League. You know what I mean? I've watched him on his regional scene when he was doing kickboxing fights, when he was doing the karate circuit, when he was, competing in Chuck Norris's World Combat League. And I kind of grew up wanting to be like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And, over the years, I'm so happy that he's been able to put not only karate on the map, but the style of fighting that he has on the map. There aren't too many people like it. I mean, Michael Venom Page is really the only other person outside of Raymond Daniels who does not really compete that much anymore that has a similar style to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And it's effective. Point karate. And, just karate in general, if you are at that top end elite, you can really frustrate your opposition. And then when I look at the odds here and I see, Gabriel Bonfim sitting at minus 420, Stephen Thompson at plus 300, 9,300 for Bonfim, 6,900 for Thompson, okay. If the fight hits the mat, Bonfim probably will look like a minus 400 favorite. But what happens if it doesn't hit the mat? If this remains standing, I think that Bonfim is going to significantly struggle on the feet, as everybody does against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Dealing with that lead leg, dealing with the side kicks, the angles, the straight punches. I remember even doubting Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, in the Kevin Holland fight, and Wonderboy kicked the shit out of Kevin Holland. A guy that's a dangerous, lanky striker who I thought was going to be able to touch him up. It just doesn't happen, man. The angles, the side kicks, the round kicks, the straight punches, the footwork. He's not there when you think he's there. And then if you are trying to come into range, Stephen Thompson intercepts you with some shots down the middle. So the way I'm looking at this fight is Stephen Thompson's takedown defense, I think it's better than what the public believes it is. I think it's underrated. Not only that, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson has fought top end competition, whereas Bonfim is on his way up. And the one time that he did not find an early finish, and the one time that he overexerted himself, a guy of Nicholas Dalby's skill set was able to beat him. And I know what Wonder Boy would do to Nicholas Dalby. I think that Thompson, yes, he's older. He 100% is older, but I think that he can still pull off victories in this division. He's a ranked fighter. He's fought his past several fights: Joaquin Buckley, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Kevin Holland, Bilal Muhammad, Gilbert Burns, Jeff Neal, Vicente Luque, you know what I mean? Anthony Pettis, Darren Till, Jorge Masvidal. I mean, what are we talking about here? This is ridiculous. And yes, this is all about timing in this sport. The new guy coming up, facing the guy that is established, being that gatekeeper that Stephen Thompson is, allowing these guys on the way up to kind of earn their spot and test them to see if they're legitimate or not. Munir Lazez, Trevin Giles, Nicholas Dalby, Ange Lusa, Chaos Williams, none of those guys are Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And I understand that I could have the same exact mindset in the main event. I just worry about the firepower that Tallison Teixeira has for Derrick Lewis. I'm not as concerned about Gabriel Bonfim's firepower on the feet. Thompson's been knocked down. Yes, he's been chinned. He's been hurt. He's been knocked out. But I think that, if I am in Thompson's camp, we're going to really work on our footwork and not be there. Kind of just, fence and just dart in and out and point fight, if you will. He may not score well at 6,900. He may score 70 points, 65 points. But I think that if this is a stand-up fight, there's no way that Thompson's a plus 300 fighter. And that's where I think the fight's going to be taking place. Obviously Bonfim's guillotines and his darces and his anaconda chokes, everything from the front headlock series can end the fight in a blink of an eye. I get that. But I'm not going to bet on that happening. I'm just not. I'm going to say that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson ends up pulling off the upset as a plus 300 underdog by just kind of outstriking Gabriel Bonfim over 15 minutes.
One of the things we've always talked about with Stephen Thompson, and you can speak about this extremely well, is the fact of it's not like there's just a lot of guys you can go out there
Right.
and that can mimic that style. I mean, you literally pretty much mentioned, are you bringing Raymond Daniels or are you not? And that is
Right.
one of the hardest parts of taking Stephen Thompson. From a DraftKings perspective, even though he's priced at 6,900, to me, what's that fantasy score upside? Can he hit 75 points in a decision win?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know because, yes, he's had a ton of fights. He's had 21 fights in the UFC. He's only had 10 knockdowns. So, I mean, typically he is outpointing you. He's just being smart. He's hitting you and not being hit. He is trying to come back from that fight unscathed. Obviously, he can head kick you. Obviously, he can drop you. I mean, he really beat the brakes off of Kevin Holland. He beat Vicente Luque pretty badly as well. And these are guys with very dangerous, jiu-jitsu, kind of similar to Gabriel Bonfim, if you will. Good striking, good jiu-jitsu. But yeah, I think like a 3-round decision. He did score, Jason, he scored 95.5 against Vicente Luque. Granted, that's back in 2019. That's 6 years ago. But 95.5, 138 significant strikes landed, 1 knockdown, but really, really out-volumed him. I think the Jorge Masvidal fight, 68 points, 75 points, something like that is more in the realm of possibility. But listen, when guys get tired, they make mistakes, and if Bonfim gasses, you are going to be right there in front of one of the best strikers to ever exist inside the UFC.
The Stephen Thompson wins by decision prop at plus 650 is so damn intriguing.
I mean, come on, bro. What are we talking about here? I mean, I get it. The guy's 42, but you're talking about a specialist who is so good. Like, I know that he's older, but Kevin Holland, Jeff Neal, Vicente Luque, granted, you could timestamp those fights and say, man, it's not 2019, 2020, or 2022 anymore. But still, like, the way that he fights is to do his best at not taking damage. He's not a brawler. He's not Jeremy Stevens in there getting into a brawl whether he wins or loses. He is trying to be as efficient as possible, and that's why, like, that style and the style that I've, my father taught me, and other like Michael Venom Page, I think that we can fight a little bit longer because of just trying to be as efficient as possible and take the least amount of damage over the course of your career.
Yeah, I mean, on the other side of the equation, if you're going to be a Bonfim backer, your thought process has to be, especially when you look at his price tag of 9,300, is that he is going to spam takedowns and he is going to rack up points with takedowns and control time, strikes on the mat. I overall, I mean, I just see this thing going 15 minutes. I don't love either side of this from a DFS perspective, just because of what that fantasy score upside could be in terms of these two guys. I'm going to pick Gabriel Bonfim, more betting against really the age of Stephen Thompson going against him, but do not mind if you're going to be a Stephen Thompson backer. You've got this look.
Are you ready for this? You ready to max bet Stephen Thompson?
Okay.
I can admit that I have not been looking at socials that much. You want to know who he's been training with for a good amount of this camp, and it looks to be like mentoring him throughout the entire camp?
Is it his brother-in-law?
Nope. Let me just hint. It's a Canadian.
What, GSP?
Rory McDonald.
Interesting.
I like that, Jason. I like that a lot. Come on.
Yeah, Rory the question kind of came up recently to him about whether or not he was looking to maybe come back, and he basically said that ship has sailed.
I love him so much.
I want to say he basically made the comment of like, yeah, the urge is still there, but every time I train, I realize I don't want to do it.
Yeah. I think I saw the same interview or the same moment when he talked about that. Like, it's a lot on the body, and especially if people have taken a ton of concussions. You get cracked one time, you get your bell rung, you're like, dude. I'll just do some jiu-jitsu matches. You know what I mean? Like,
I was watching a video. You remember when Vanessa Noopoulos jumped into Joe Rogan's arms, that fight?
Yes.
So I don't know if this is a recent interview, whatnot, but she's on a podcast and she talks about when she got dropped in that fight, she went unconscious. She said when she woke up, she had no idea how she was on her back and how she was in a jiu-jitsu position, but then realized, I've got the arm bar, I can snap her arm.
Yeah, you go off of instincts, right? Like half the time fighting is all reaction. Like you train so much. If you're out there thinking, it's probably a low-paced, low-volume fight where you're actually able to methodically think about your next move. You should be going on autopilot and trusting your instincts for the most part. Especially in the heat of a moment when you're hurt. You're just going to do whatever you trained, whether that's poor or whether that's great. You're going to do whatever you trained in those situations. And luckily, if you have jiu-jitsu and you're in a bad compromised situation, you can pull off an arm bar from guard.
Next up, we have got a featherweight matchup between Calvin Kattar and Steve Garcia. Garcia, a minus 120 betting favorite, plus 100 for Calvin. Calvin, 7,800 on DK, $14 on FanDuel. Garcia, 8,400 on DK, and $17 on FanDuel. I already see someone claiming that Teixeira and Garcia are DFS locks for the night. I definitely would not say that's the case. Of course, things have not gone well for Calvin Kattar. He's lost 4 straight, 5 of 6. His 6 of his last 7 fights have gone the distance. For Steve Garcia, very quietly riding a 5-fight winning streak. All those have been either first or second round TKOs. 7 of his 8 UFC fights have ended via stoppage. You kind of mentioned this point a little bit earlier, talking about Calvin Kattar. Clearly, his spot on the UFC roster is on the line in terms of this one. But to me, the question I really have for you when we talk about Steve Garcia is we've seen all these finishes, but can he outbox a technical striker like Calvin Kattar?
It's a great question, Jason. I mean, Calvin Kattar is one of the best boxers in MMA, and yes, he still is. Even though he's on a 4-fight losing streak, even though his best days may be behind him, he's still so crafty on the feet. His boxing, the highlights that this guy has with his knockouts and his combinations had most of the MMA community in awe. And they were very basic. It was a pull counter, very good jab cross, a step back rear uppercut, like simple stuff, but his boxing was super clean. And then like he had momentum in the sport. And then, you go into a war with Josh Emmett, and then you start and get to a rough patch where maybe you're starting to face some grapplers that are really testing, your grappling skills, your wrestling skills. Not to mention you're coming off of a devastating lower body injury of dealing with an ACL tear, and then dealing with rehabbing that and re-aggravating that and trying to stay healthy. It's just like, man, it's been a battle for Calvin Kattar. And I do hope that it hasn't affected his confidence, but it probably has affected his confidence a little bit. I still believe that he believes in himself, but it's hard not to like look at things and say, dude, what's going on? Like, I've lost 4 fights. I'm fighting for my job. I'm still technically he's still ranked 14th in the world. Stephen Thompson is still ranked 12th in the world according to the UFC rankings. So this is a situation where Steve Garcia is on an absolute knockout tear. When he touches people, he hurts them. And it's kind of come out of nowhere. And this is just me speaking. You and I have talked about how several fighters have surprised us with their success in the UFC. Steve Garcia is one of them for me. I mean, granted, the strength of competition has not been unbelievable. It has not been the same strength of competition or strength of schedule that Calvin Kattar has faced. But he's dispatching his opponents like he should be. And Steve Garcia's success has caught me off guard because I fought on the same card as Steve Garcia when he fought Kin Moy back in Bellator. And I've known Kin Moy from the regional scene, and he's a small guy for the division. And very good kickboxer, very good striker. And they had an absolute war. It was a fantastic fight. But I didn't think that fight would produce the Steve Garcia that we're seeing today. So it makes me just scratch my head, and I'm like, man, this guy seems like he's an overperformer. Like, I think that he's going to get a reality check one of these days, and it's hard for me not to see Calvin Kattar as that guy, even if he's on four fight losing streak. It's just me. I've trained with Calvin Kattar. I know what Calvin's capable of. He's very good. He has good boxing. He has good wrestling. He has good jiu-jitsu. Even if defensively it was exposed against 𝗛𝗲𝘁'𝘀, the kid's good. He's very good. And then when I compare the two, I never would have thought Steve Garcia would be favored at -140, priced at 8,400 over Calvin Kattar, who sits as a +115 underdog, priced at 7,800. Just mentally, it's hard for me to wrap my brain around that. So, yeah, I don't think that the wins that Steve Garcia has, Kyle Nelson, Sungwoo Choi, Melquizael Costa, Shai Lan, Njokuani, Chase Hooper, has the same ring to the people that Calvin Kattar is facing. Yusuf Zalal, 𝗛𝗲𝘁'𝘀, Arnold Allen, Josh Emmett, Giga Chikadze, Max Holloway, Danny Ige, Jeremy Stevens, Zabit Magomedsharipov. I mean, it's another situation where the veteran needs to prove their ranking, and Thompson needs to prove his ranking. Kattar needs to prove his ranking and get back in the win column. I mean, we did see Steve Garcia get hurt and knocked out against Mahashate with a big counter right hand. We saw him in his debut in the UFC get back controlled from Luis Pena. Granted, some of these are a very, very long time ago. We've seen him get rocked in numerous fights, but the firepower he possesses out of that back left hand as a southpaw fighter, he's a good striker. I need Kattar to go out there, and I understand it's orthodox against southpaw. I need Kattar to establish his jab. He needs to establish his jab, even if it's opposite stance. He can still do so. Set up that right hand, win the battle of the lead foot. So Kattar needs to have his lead foot on the outside of Steve Garcia to line up that right hand. And I do think that even though if it's opposite stances, if Kattar establishes his jab, that's when he frustrates and picks apart his opposition. That's what happened in the Josh Emmett fight. Even though they said he lost, he did not. And then whenever you see Kattar have success and build momentum, it's off of the jab. And now to kind of add on to why I'm picking Calvin Kattar here, I just think it's I still don't view Garcia as the favorite, and he could knock out Calvin Kattar. I don't think that's going to happen. But Calvin Kattar has been doing multiple camps now up at TriStar, and I love that for him. I love being a part of a strategist in Firas Zahabi. Working with Rob Font, working with Ayman Zahabi, working with other talented fighters out of TriStar where, inside of the New England area, you're not getting that same type of work and training partners. So, do they have the correct game plan to beat Steve Garcia? I'm sure they've cooked something up. So give me Calvin Kattar here at 7,800, Jason. I understand I'm taking 200 dogs that have not had the best success in the past 5 fights that they've had, but I'm going to go Stephen Thompson in the previous fight, and I'm going to go Calvin Kattar here over Steve Garcia.
And I don't mind parlaying those 2 fighters together.
Yeah, here we go.
To me, and when you look at Calvin Kattar, is just, and you bring up a really great point about who Steve Garcia has defeated in this 5-streak run. And, while the Chase Hooper win has really matured very well, it was a much different Chase Hooper, back then than to what Chase Hooper is, currently today. I will say I was very surprised he's Calvin Kattar as the underdog here. Calvin Kattar is going to be the pick. I just think that he just outboxes Steve Garcia. But I mean, look, you do this, I don't. If you want to be a Steve Garcia backer here, I don't mind it just because he's headhunting. He's going to be headhunting in this one. But to me, Calvin Kattar is going to be the pick for me. Next up, we got Nate Landwehr taking on Morgan Charriere. Charriere is the betting favorite here. He's minus 280, plus 230 for Nate the Train, who's 7,300 on DK, $12 on FanDuel. Morgan, 8,900 on DK. And $16 on FanDuel. This is essentially a hometown fight for Nate from Clarksville, Tennessee, which is an hour outside of Nashville. He is coming off a submission loss back in December against Doo Ho Choi. When you look at Charriere's last fight, he named decision loss against Nathaniel Wood. 15 decisions in his career, Pete. Here's a crazy stat. 8 of those 15 are either split or majority decisions. That's just an absolute...
I don't know what the hell.
Look, if you want to go prop game hunting here, you really want to get crazy. Maybe you find that this fight ends split majority decision. One thing about Nate is, and you've been on this train before, is he's going to fight for your dollar. No matter what, Nate is fighting for your dollar. But to me, on the other side of the equation, it's got to be about not getting into a slugfest and being a well-rounded mixed martial artist in this matchup for Morgan Charriere.
Yeah, I love Nate Landwehr, and I think we're all waiting for the post-fight interview if he does win, because he's very, very he's gold on the mic. He really is gold on the mic. Nate the Train in the UFC, baby. Like we all know he's exciting. He's electric on the mic. He's kind of got some like wrestling tendencies about him of how good he is. Like his charisma is good. And offensively, he's very dangerous, right? Like he can throw. He can get into a brawl. He can grapple. But defensively, my man just throws caution to the wind, and it's at his own expense because, his striking defense is okay, but he seems to get hit and hurt. It sits at 52%. His takedown defense, on paper, it's 74%, but last fight, it was horrible. He looked like I think career worst in his previous performance. And it really threw me for a loop that Nate Landwehr struggled that much in the wrestling department. His get-ups, he was getting crucifixed. He was getting elbowed. He was just getting completely butchered by Doo Ho Choi. And then it resulted in a 3rd round TKO where he just had no answers for the ground game. And, on the feet, we know that Nate Landwehr can throw heavy. He does get rocked and hurt sometimes, but he can push through. This is the same guy that got knocked out against Herbert Burns, which is a horrible loss, an absolute horrible loss. He got flying kneed by Julian Erosa. That's all right. That's forgivable. But yeah, man, and then you go back and you think about the Dan Ige fight where he just did nothing. And it's just like, all right, I do not know from fight to fight what the hell's going on with Nate Landwehr. And Morgan Charriere, did not look good in his previous fight, but I think the person he fought in Nate and Nathaniel Wood is super slept on and very, very underrated. And I just think the pace that these guys are going to push is going to be crazy. And I think the wrestling skill set of Morgan Charriere and just being able to mix things up and not being, the last fight of Nate Landwehr left a real bad taste in many people's mouths. Morgan Charriere losing to Nathaniel Wood, like he got hurt early, but he didn't quit on himself. And I do think that this is a situation where like Morgan Charriere, I think, can just best Nate Landwehr 2 of the 3 rounds. And I think it could result in a crazy, crazy score. But I also think that it could result in a late finish. But Morgan's known for going the distance. So, like, I could see Nate Landwehr getting a ton of exposure because of what he brings to the table, pace wise, aggression wise, essentially being in his hometown. But he makes a ton of mistakes, Jason. He really does make a ton of mistakes. I think Morgan Charriere's looking to hope to get on to the pairs card, but he needs to deal with Nate Landwehr first and dispatch of him. So I think he can do it. I think it's a difficult matchup if he just plays into Nate's game. But if he mixes things up and he blends the striking into the wrestling, and then he just kind of keeps going back and forth and being unpredictable, I think that he can win 2 of the 3 rounds over Nate Landwehr. Priced at 8,900 as a -250 favorite. A little wide in my opinion. I was kind of expecting like -170. But I think it's recency bias. Everybody seeing that last performance from Nate Landwehr saying, my God, he looked terrible. If not career worst. And I don't blame them from kind of ballooning the odds to where they are. So I still will pick Morgan Charriere. And I think that Nate Landwehr will get a ton of love from the DFS community for what he does, priced at 7,300. Being in his hometown, that he's going to fight for your dollar. But I do think that the better mixed martial artist is clearly Morgan Charriere.
The only concern I do has is maybe a little hometown cooking. If we end up getting 15 minutes in terms of this one, especially when you look at the history of Morgan, a guy that he finds himself in very close fights throughout his MMA run here. Charriere is going to be the pick for me, and it's because of him just being the better mixed martial arts in this one. Does he pay off that $8,900 price tag? There's some other fighters in that range I'd probably rather get to than Morgan in terms of that one. But on the other side, don't mind anyone who says they want to get to Nate in that matchup. Next up, we got a heavyweight matchup of Vitor Petrino taking on Austen Lane. Petrino, a massive betting favorite here, a 7-1 betting favorite, plus 450 for Lane. Petrino, 9,600 DraftKings, $19 on FanDuel. Lane, 9,600 on DK, and $10 on FanDuel. This is the heavyweight debut for Vitor Petrino, who got off to a great start in the UFC, started 4-0, but has lost back-to-back fights against Anthony Smith and Justin Jacoby. He was finished in both of those matchups. Lane on the other side, 1-3, won no contests in the UFC. All of his UFC losses have come by TKO KO. His only win in the UFC, you may remember this one because he was a massive betting underdog in that matchup as well against Robelis de Spain, where he utilized his takedowns and just controlling Robelis there on the ground. When you look at talking points for this one, this is low-level UFC heavyweight action. Let's just call it what it is in terms of that one. For Lane, is takedowns the key to victory here? And on the other side of Vitor Petrino is, do you trust him in his price tag? And I want to see what this guy looks like on the scale tomorrow, Pete.
Yeah, naturally, I'm always going to pick most light heavyweights to beat heavyweights, just because I think that the heavyweight division is the least skilled division out there. I've always said that. The lighter the guys are, the more talented and more skilled and even the matchups are, which is why I will get to some underdogs in the lighter weight classes a little bit more. In the heavyweight classes, it's just so volatile, right? Like, underdogs can pop because it's one shot. One shot can turn the tide. But I think technically there are significant differences between divisions. And I do favor the light heavyweight division over the heavyweight division, as I just mentioned. I think that Vitor Petrino, maybe he is a guy that cut a tremendous amount of weight. You're looking at another fighter in Kennedy Nzechukwu, who decided to move up in weight as well, and it's just like, oh well, why am I cutting this weight? I'm a strong guy. I can utilize my athleticism instead of raw power like some of these heavyweights. I got better cardio than a lot of these heavyweights. I can push a pace a little bit better than them. And then you see who Vitor Petrino is fighting in his heavyweight debut. And Jason, I feel bad for Austen Lane. I do feel bad for Austen Lane. Granted, he is the one that is signing these contracts. But there are pawns in this game and the matchmakers and just the entire organization, just they get these guys fights that there's no like clear path to victory, and you feel bad for these guys that are taking unnecessary damage and ridiculous amounts of repetitive concussions. Austen Lane has been knocked out a ridiculous amount of times. 6 knockout losses. 4 of those in the first round, 2 of those in the second round. And it's like, somebody gets stopped via strikes, TKO. All right. But this guy's been knocked out unconscious bad. Jonathan Deniz slept him. Mario Pinto slept him. Tafa beat him via strikes. Ground and pound by Vernon Lewis. Knockout by Frank Tate. Knockout on the Contender Series by Greg Hardy. It's just a lot of damage. And it makes me kind of like cringe when I see these guys not knowing when to quit, especially like when they're losing in the worst ways possible. You're not getting submitted. You're getting knocked out unconscious. So, I mean, it seems like it's inevitable. Petrino's going to knock out Austen Lane. He is. I'm sorry to say. Unless that Petrino's an absolute fraud, and him getting submitted by Anthony Smith and then getting knocked out against Dustin Jacoby really proves that he's a fraud. I don't believe it does. I think that this guy is well-rounded, and he definitely will have the better cardio here over Austen Lane. If he gets put in a bad position, I don't think he's going to get TKO'd. I mean, he could, right? It's possible, but I think that he has Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu enough to survive. He has crazy power. He's going up against a guy in Austen Lane whose chin, Augusta wind might knock him out at this point. And I don't say any of that, trying to be malicious. I'm kind of worried about people that take that much damage over the course of their career. Like, it's a lot, man. Like, do something else. I mean, like, it's scary. And I'm not going to feel good about it, but Vitor Petrino's the pick by KO. At some point, he lands a shot and he knocks out Austen Lane.
Yeah, it's tough to trust it. I understand your thought process with it in terms of this one, but man, to me, it's more just about what the number is. I mean, that's more of anything else, especially what's happened in Petrino's last 2 fights. That's why I mentioned when I was teeing up this fight is I really want to see what does Petrino look like on the scale tomorrow. What do we see him look at heavyweight as opposed to what we see him at light heavyweight? Maybe it's just a situation of he just got tired cutting weight and maybe realizing, hey, you were taking so much out of your body to make 205 pounds. Let's move up the heavyweight, not cut weight. So we'll see what happens there in terms of that one. But to me, low-level heavyweight action here. And, probably boom or bust on both sides of this equation if you want to take a chance there on Austen Lane. Next up, we have got a light heavyweight matchup. We got Junior Tafa taking on Tuco Tokkos. Tokkos is the betting underdog here at plus 145, minus 175 for Junior Tafa, who's 8,600 on DK, $16 on FanDuel. Tokkos is 7,600 DK and $14 on FanDuel. Light heavyweight debut here for Junior Tafa, coming off a second round TKO win there back in October, seeking back-to-back wins for the first time in the UFC. 4 of his 5 UFC fights have ended in the first or second round. He did go the distance in his UFC debut against Muhammad Usman back in 2023. Tokkos 0-2 in the UFC, coming off a unanimous decision loss against Sterling back in December. And, really to me, and you were mentioning this right before the show about Junior Tafa going down that Instagram rabbit hole. He's looking pretty good at 205 pounds.
Yeah, Junior Tafa is looking awesome. And this is a guy that's bounced between divisions, formerly fighting at heavyweight, now taking his career seriously, looking shredded, man. Like, really looking shredded, and getting held down by a guy on short notice, and Sean Sharaf, that was a heavyweight. He weighed in at 241. Sean Sharaf, well, let's see what he weighed in. He was a big guy. He weighed in at 252, and even a short notice opponent that weighed so much was able to put Junior Tafa in some compromised positions. Ultimately, Tafa displayed a ton of heart, came out, ended up finishing the fight, but man, he was in some bad positions, and I could totally see why people are looking at the fight film of Junior Tafa saying, guys, he's 6-3 overall. This guy is not understanding the game of wrestling and jiu-jitsu. He has not grasped that part of the sport yet. He's learning on the job, if you will. And until he shows us that he can defend takedowns, he can keep the fight on the feet, he cannot get mounted, he cannot get, his back taken, he cannot almost get submitted and pounded out in the first round, we're not picking him. And I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. I mean, this is the same guy that got heel hooked by Valter Walker, same guy that got leg kicked, TKO'd via Marcos Rogério de Lima, got out muscled and out wrestled in the Muhammad Usman fight. But every fight is different, right? And I think timing is everything. He's decided to come to light heavyweight, take his career seriously. He looks in phenomenal shape. One that I would applaud him and say, dude, good job. Whatever you're doing, good job. You look good. Tuco Tokkos, meanwhile, a guy I've never really been high on. It seems like he's a body at Killcliff FC. Definitely, has a solid record, picking up 10 victories. But if you go and you look at some of the fighters that he's beaten, some guys that he was supposed to beat. And, his fourth fight from now was against a 1-7 opponent, Brian Jackson. So it's just like, that's just to get a win, that's not impressive. Then he, beats Myron Dennis via arm injury. Okay. He got submitted in round 1 against Umar C. Well, Tuco Tokkos, I thought you were the guy with the good ground game and the good wrestling and the good jiu-jitsu. And then in the Navajo Sterling fight, I think that is probably his best fight to date, because everybody in the world has city kickboxing on a pedestal, right? Like we all do. We all hold city kickboxing to a very high degree. And he went out there, took shots from Navajo Sterling, who is supposed to knock everybody out. Low volume fighter in Navajo Sterling, but one that is very accurate. But he was able to take Navajo Sterling down, control him, put him in bad spots. And a very questionable decision, and many people were upset by it, that it was a unanimous decision, one where maybe Tuco Tokkos thought he did better than what the judges viewed it. So for me, I have this fight, lined pretty close. I have, if this fight remains on the feet, Tafa's going to look -300 on the feet, but him lined at -180, it does give you a little bit of a hesitation, because what happens if he gets taken down? What happens if he hasn't improved? Because this is the same guy that has been taken down and put in bad spots by everybody I mentioned. I do see on the social media that he has been taking his grappling seriously as well. It's different when it's under the lights. And as long as he stays moving and he works on his way up and he finds an underhook and he posts a hand and he gets to the cage, and I like that, because I know as long as it remains standing, he's got the firepower to end the fight. Tuco Tokkos is a guy I was so close to picking, and I'm like, what am I doing? I don't know if I can back Tuco Tokkos. I get it if you want to go that route because of how good he looked against Navajo Sterling, but I do think there is room for development between fights, especially when these guys are young, especially when these guys can literally just train and don't have to work other jobs. So I'm going to go with Junior Tafa. I think that he's made some adjustments, or I'm going to hope that he's made some adjustments. And I think he knocks out Tuco Tokkos, because Navajo Sterling didn't do it. I get it. But Tafa's got this like killer instinct about him. When he hurts you or he hits you, he's going to take you out. He's going to find that finish. And his hands are good. His striking's good. He just has to round out his game. If he can really patch that hole, I think that he can win some low-level fights for sure. So give me Tafa here to win at 8,600 as a -180 favorite.
Yeah, Tafa is another one. I mean, Tokkos is kind of an underdog that initially I was kind of looking at, but it's just when you look at just kind of how this run has gone for him here. To me, give me Junior Tafa. The $8,600 price tag. And you bring up a great point. If this fight can stay on the feet, I mean, we know that's what the Tafa brothers like to do in terms of there. Next up, we got a matchup between Max Griffin and Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis, a -320 betting favorite, +250 for Max Griffin, who is $7,100 on DK, $12 on FanDuel. The Action Man, $9,100 on DraftKings, and $17 on FanDuel. Of course, the Action Man going a little viral because a regional fighter clearly doesn't know. What did you think? Sean Strickland wasn't going to react? Seriously?
And that guy's a cop apparently too, isn't he?
He's a cop down here in South Florida. But when you look at Chris Curtis, 5-4 with 1 no contest in the UFC, which is kind of surprising. I mean, you wouldn't think of Chris Curtis being a 500 fighter in the UFC. His last fight was a 3rd round TKO loss against Roman Kopylov. He's lost back-to-back fights. When you look at Max Griffin, 12 of his 17 UFC fights have gone the distance, 39 years old. His last fight was a 3rd round submission loss against Michael Chiesa. But you mentioned it right here at the beginning of the show, Pete, this could be a striker's delight.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a striker's delight. And, Chris Curtis is a guy that I would say has very good counters on the feet, keeps his hands pretty low, kind of lulls his opponents into throwing a combination so he can slip and rip. He targets the body at some of the best inside of MMA, which, isn't as common as a southpaw. I think that he's one of the best body punchers as a southpaw I've seen in some time. And Chris Curtis, when he goes, I'm like, yeah, okay, let those hands and let those combinations rip. There was a time when I was worried about his durability, but his durability has really checked out. His takedown defense at one point was poor. But nowadays, man, his takedown defense is very good. And it's something that he's worked on since the PFL times. And it's become a strong suit for him where he's defending takedowns to keep it on the feet, to butcher you with his hands. His takedown defense sits at 82%. And I do think that this is a situation where Chris Curtis will have the bigger moments. Max Griffin doesn't throw at the same near volume. So Chris Curtis has 12 strikes attempted per minute, whereas Max Griffin has 7.8. And I do think that the more damaging shots will be for Chris Curtis. The only issue I have is that it's not like Chris Curtis blows out his opponents. You know what I mean? He'll find a good counter. He's a patient guy. He does throw with decent volume, but he's smart and intelligent where he's not going to put himself at risk of getting knocked out or getting compromised by hunting a finish. If it's there, it's there. If it's not, he's cool with going the distance. And I think that's something that's kind of come with age and experience, whereas a younger Chris Curtis would hunt the finishes a little bit more. This version of Chris Curtis, I think he makes adjustments and he builds his reads, and then off of his reads is where he comes up with the game plan to best his opponents. So I think that Max Griffin's best case here is to establish his jab, stay as long as possible with his combinations, win the lead foot battle, as mentioned in the Steve Garcia and Calvin Kattar fight, and mix in some wrestling. And I understand, not open mat wrestling, but putting Chris Curtis against the cage. If he starts to get some momentum, throw some combinations, pin him against the cage, okay, you got to restart. No big deal. But maybe that kind of stalls and just negates some of the momentum that Chris Curtis starts to build. So, I mean, I don't view this fight as a -310. Chris Curtis destroys Max Griffin. I just don't. I'm picking Chris Curtis to win the fight. But each round and each fight that I see, if it goes 15 minutes, it's not like I'm like, man, Curtis beat the shit out of his opponent. It's like, yeah, Curtis won that. So for me, the price tag is just rich, and it's unnecessarily rich. I don't see a knockout happening. I could be wrong, but I see Chris Curtis winning 2 of the 3 rounds. So give me Chris Curtis here at a -310 favorite, priced at $9,100.
The $9,100 price tag is what concerns me about this fight. And it's not that I don't think that Chris Curtis is going to win the fight. I just think it's more of, and we talk about this each and every episode about, look, we're trying to get, 650, potentially 700 points every week. And when you're talking about a fighter that is priced at 9,100, where you expect that if he doesn't finish Max Griffin, there's not going to be takedowns in this matchup. To me, it's a fantasy score upside equation with that, especially when you look in that 9,000 range. There's other fighters I'd rather get to.
Yeah, agree. I mean, that we can love some fighters in matchups. We can like them. We can pick them. But for DFS, we need production. And if you're not producing, it's very hard for us to really smash that exposure button to get us a part of your lineups. I mean, we see anomalies all the time, right, where these guys go out there and they have out performances from the norm. And, I think that is a very, very small chance of him breaking the slate. So I will be underweight to whatever the ownership is or level with. I will not be overexposed to Chris Curtis.
Next up, we got another welterweight matchup. This one is Jake Matthews taking on Chidi Njokuani. Jake Matthews, a plus 130 betting underdog, minus 155. For Njokuani, who's $8,200 on DK, $15 on FanDuel. Matthews, $8,000 on DK, and $14 on FanDuel. Jake Matthews coming off a decision win back in February against Francisco Prado, seeking 3 straight wins for the first time since 2020. 4 of his last 5 fights have gone the distance. Chidi Njokuani won 3 in a row, 2 of those via decision, all at welterweight. Well, technically all at welterweight, because his last matchup, he did miss weight in that second round TKO win against Zaleski dos Santos. And, Chidi is much better as a 170-pound fighter versus 185. When you look at his losses in his career, typically they're at 185 pounds, not at 170 pounds. And Jake Matthews, a guy that's been around a long time, and I kind of look at this matchup and I've been looking at this number of Jake Matthews all day. And why is it part of me goes, he really should go to takedown route, but I don't think he will, Pete.
Yeah, it's the problem with that I have with Jake Matthews, Jason. It's like he has all the attributes and skills to be a very well-rounded fighter. It's just like, I don't know. It reminds me of a wrestler that's fallen in love with his hands. And he has a very good ground game, very good submission skill set. That has no urgency to get it to that point. He's so content and confident in his hands that I think that he allows time to slip away. And from fight to fight, I don't know what I'm getting when I'm betting on Jake Matthews. I like him a lot. I really do. I mean, he's 3-2 in his past 5. Chidi Njokuani is 3-2 in his past 5. Matthew Semmelsberger knocked him down about 1 billion times in that fight. Lost 2 years and 6 months ago. Lost the decision there. Darius Flowers looked like he could threaten and hurt Jake Matthews on the feet, and he was supposed to get blown out and then did get submitted via rear naked choke. But it's like, my God, that was Darius Flowers. Michael Morales, that's totally expected for him to lose that bout. Phil Rowe decision, very similar body type to Chidi Njokuani. And then for Francisco Prado, a guy who's not a welterweight, he's a lightweight that decided to come into the welterweight division. So I don't view that win worth a shit at all. The Phil Rowe win, I do value. But Phil Rowe's Muay Thai is not as good as Chidi Njokuani. Phil Rowe tends to get his work done with his hands. And what Phil did is he connected on a ton of big straight right hands against Jake Matthews, which looked like it stunned and hurt him at times. And, Phil Rowe, kind of got a little too close, allowed Jake Matthews overhands and big hooks to land on him. I thought it was a close fight. But like Phil was feeling himself early on in that fight. And I just watched that fight back and I go, man, the stature of Chidi Njokuani, he's very long, he's rangy, good jab, good low kicks, good front kicks to the body. And that's something I think that can be evident from the beginning, is Chidi Njokuani is going to front kick the hell out of Jake Matthews, whether it's to the body or it's to the face. And then when Chidi is hunting a finish, he is not just going to throw hand combinations. He is going to throw hands into an elbow. You close the gap, you grab him. He knees you in the belly. You hunch over from the body shot. He elbows you. He hits you with a foot sweep. You know what I mean? Like Chidi Njokuani is attacking you on all levels, and he's going to brutalize you. And I can't put faith in Jake Matthews wrestling. Chidi Njokuani is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, not the same type of submission grappler as Jake Matthews. But I can't pick Jake Matthews if I don't think he gets it there, or if I don't think he gets it there for a prolonged period. So I think a lot of people are going to be looking at Jake Matthews at 8,000 saying, man, Chidi Njokuani might gas. If you look at his record, he gets taken down and he gets TKO'd, but he's going up against big 185ers in that fight. And I think I just don't view Matthews as a bully. I view Matthews as a guy that's going to be reacting to everything Chidi Njokuani does. And then when he decides to wrestle and lace up those wrestling shoes, I think it's going to be too little too late. And that's my own perspective. I like Chidi Njokuani. I'm in love with the striking. He has also worked with my striking coach from when I trained with him, Crew Dom out in New Mexico, who has a gym in Tampa. Actually, not Tampa, in Daytona. Um, but yeah, I'm going to be going Chidi Njokuani. He's looked too damn good for me to get off of betting him. So give me Chidi Njokuani here at minus 120 at 8,200. And normally I'm not confident about this pick. And normally I have a terrible track record with the 8,200, 8,000 pick.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, Jason. I'm feeling the Chidi Njokuani fight this week. So give me Chidi Njokuani.
If you told me that Jake was going to grapple, I'd feel so much more confident taking Jake Matthews. But let's see what Chidi Njokuani looks like on the scale tomorrow. Let's see if he does make weight after missing weight for his last matchup there. Next up, we got a female matchup. You got Lauren Murphy taking on Eduarda Moura. Moura, a massive 7-1 betting favorite in this one, plus 450 for Murphy, who is $6,700 DK, $10 on FanDuel, Moura 9,500 on DK. And $19 on FanDuel. First time we're seeing Lauren Murphy since January 2023, which is a unanimous decision loss against Jessica Andrade. She does turn 42 years old later this month, so do you want to trust a 42-year-old fighter? Kind of like what we talked about with Stephen Thompson a little bit earlier. 10 of her 14 UFC fights have gone the distance. You look at Moura, 2-1 in the UFC, coming off a win against Veronica Hardy in November. But she is also someone we need to pay attention to on the scale tomorrow, because in her first two UFC fights, Pete, she missed weight.
Yeah, we definitely have to pay attention to this because I'm very interested. I mean, Lauren Murphy is very interesting because, like, she's overperformed throughout her entire career. She really has. Jason, what weight has Lauren Murphy fought at? Straw weight? Flyweight? I'm looking right now on the UFC's website. Because she's been inactive for a little bit, but I do not see her still as a ranked fighter. So I think that goes to show the revolving door that is women's MMA. I think that you're on top for a while in women's MMA, and then it's a sudden fall. And we have a very hot prospect in Eduarda Moura, who is at an untouchable price tag of minus 700. It's crazy. DFS, I like her at 9,500 because of the takedowns. But if I told you, do you like Eduarda Moura, who's 9,500, against a veteran of women's MMA and Lauren Murphy, and Eduarda Moura only scored 66 fantasy points against Veronica Hardy? Do you like that? She's 9,500? Because I'm not too fond of Eduarda Moura's upside if she does not wrestle. She needs to wrestle early and often. And not only that, we need her to wrestle and find a finish, because if she's not getting repetitive takedowns and going to takedown city, how is she going to pay off that price tag? Murphy's very hard to finish. Murphy's ground game looked career worst against Valentina Shevchenko, and you can't really blame her because that's Shevchenko. I mean, she took her down with pretty simple takedowns. When Murphy was on her back, she did not do a lot of the technical things correct. The rest of the round went out in round one. In the round 3 or round 4, I forget which one it was. When Valentina Shevchenko took her down, she started to brutalize her with some ground and pound. And guess what? Eduarda Moura has some good ground and pound as well. And I saw Shevchenko, advance position, get into a pretty dominant position and start dropping elbows and unanswered strikes. And I can see Eduarda Moura doing that. But I think that if she goes out there and submits or TKOs Lauren Murphy, I will be extremely impressed. This is a girl in Murphy who's fought legitimate competition and has defended takedowns against some of the best. But when she is put on her back, she makes some simple mistakes that you're like, all right, she is not high level on the mat at all. With a 16-6 overall MMA record, Murphy's also talked about how this is the last fight and she is retiring after this fight, Jason. Don't like hearing that. Definitely don't like hearing that. I mean, like, maybe a little too complacent, maybe too nonchalant, going to go in there. She's going to try her best. It is what it is. I'm just going to retire regardless. She is 41. But this is Lauren Murphy, who's only been finished one time. Only been finished one time. If Eduarda Moura can go out there and finish her, tremendous feather in her cap. I don't think she does. I think she picks up a unanimous decision victory. 9,500. I love the upside if she goes and wrestles from the get-go. But if she takes a round to kind of get her reads, then I don't love it as much. So 9,500, I will be picking Eduarda Moura. This is a situation where, like, yeah, Murphy is similar to a point of a Calvin Kattar, a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, the veteran, the gatekeeper, if you will, looking to prove their ranking. Murphy's not ranked, and Murphy has not looked good in a while, and she's been outside the cage for a while. Eduarda Moura's got all the momentum. It is a prove-it spot. I think it's a building opportunity for Eduarda Moura to pick up a very notable name on her record, and I think she does so. But buyer beware. Be careful. These odds are getting a little fluky.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're rostering Moura, I think it's got to be more about it's just an ownership play. I mean, I would expect that she's going to have low ownership, especially based on her history there. I mean, Moura's going to be the pick, but yeah, you don't like the DFS upside. And I would probably look at what was her win via decision if I was looking to put a bet on this one. Next up, we've got a heavyweight matchup. Kline Njokuani taking on Valter Walker. Walker, a plus 175, betting underdog minus 210 for Njokuani, who's 8,800 DK, $18 on FanDuel. Walker, 7,400 DK. And $13 on FanDuel. Kennedy 2-0 since moving up from 205 to heavyweight. Both first-round victories coming off that TKO win against Lucas Brzeski. Walker lost his UFC debut against Lucas Brzeski via unanimous decision, but he has won back-to-back fights versus first-round heel hook, which, Pete, heel hooks can be great things if you get them. If you don't get them, you really open yourself up to getting brutalized.
Yeah, I mean, leg locks in general, right, are awesome when you hit it. Unless you have advanced jiu-jitsu. I mean, diving for a leg lock in MMA, you are susceptible to receiving some ground and pound. Being on your back in general in MMA is a very different situation than in jiu-jitsu, where you can be very offensive off of your back in jiu-jitsu. You do not have to worry about punches and elbows coming raining down on you. So it is a different game. Valter Walker, credit to him, back-to-back heel hook finishes, hasn't been done before in the UFC, made history with it. Kennedy Nzechukwu is sitting here at minus 240 at 8,800. Valter Walker is plus 185 at 7,400. I have this fight lined close because I have a hard time reading this fight, right? Because you have a former light heavyweight in Kennedy Nzechukwu who has moved up and has looked pretty damn good at heavyweight, right? Has, TKO'd Chris Barnett, has TKO'd Lucas Brzeski. I think that he's a light heavyweight who is very skilled. Kennedy Nzechukwu is very, very inconsistent, though. Similar to Nate Landwehr, you just don't know what you're going to get every single time he fights, similar to Jake Matthews. You just don't know. Sometimes he looks like, man, this kid could be ranked. This kid could be good. And then other times he goes out there and he's a little gun shy. So I don't know what to expect. Obviously, I'm expecting Valter Walker to offensively wrestle, and that's his path to victory. Put Kennedy and Nzechukwu on his back, win minutes, get control time, maybe land some ground and pound, look to finish the fight via submission. But if he does not have, early success with takedowns, and maybe he's met with some resistance, I worry about the gas tank of Valter Walker. And I think he's going to be everybody's darling this week at 7,400. People wanting to bet him at plus 185. And I think on the feet, though, if this fight stays on the feet, Kennedy Nzechukwu sitting at minus 240 is a steal. That's a steal. I mean, he should not lose to Valter Walker on the feet at all. He would be a minus 400 favorite on the feet. It's just, can he stop the takedowns? I think that he can even threaten with a front choke, too. I really do, if Valter Walker leaves his neck out there. He just has to be wise, and his reactions have to be on point. This is a situation where, Valter Walker lost to Lucas Brzeski, and his cardio looked terrible. His body looked bad. This is, Valter needs to show what he looks like on the scale first before I can plant the flag and get behind him. So for me, Kennedy Nzechukwu is going to be the pick. I do think that he is the more well-rounded fighter. I worry about the big, heavy Valter Walker with sneaky submission skills, getting on top of him, or, possibly landing some ground and pound. But I don't even know if it gets to that point, Jason. I just don't know. So because of my uncertainty, I am going to back the guy that I think has a more impressive career. I mean, Valter Walker has heel hooked Junior Tafa, not all that impressed, and Dontel Mays, not all that impressed. So I think Kennedy and Nzechukwu is clearly better than both of those guys. So I'm going to be backing him at 8,800. I'm like tempering my expectations. I don't really know what to expect.
I like the upside of Walker in this one just because of, if you remember in his last matchup on the commentary, Daniel Cormier was on the commentary in that one, and he talked about how he was with Valter the previous night. He's like, look, I'm going in there, I'm taking him down, I'm going to heel hook him. That to me is a mentality I hope that he has in terms of this one. But yeah, do I think Kenny Njokuani is a better mixed martial artist? No question I do. But just from a fantasy score upside, especially when you're talking about, in that, at $7,400 price tag, I don't mind getting the Walker just because of, if he does win, I got to imagine we're looking at a score of 90-plus points in terms of that one. Two more matchups here left to go, and they are both massive favorites. First up, we have Mitch Ramirez taking on Mike Davis. Mike Davis, a 12-1 betting favorite, plus 700 for Mitch Ramirez, who is 6,400 on DK, $9 on FanDuel. Davis, 9,800 on DraftKings, and $21 on FanDuel. Mike Davis, last time we saw him was that unanimous decision loss against Faraz Zaim, which did snap a 4-fight winning streak. Mitch Ramirez lost his UFC debut last year against Thiago Mogas. Was supposed to fight back there in April, but pulled out due to injury. And I brought this point up to Pete right before the show. I said, yeah, he's a 7-1 plus 700, but he does train out of Syndicate MMA.
Yeah, ain't no shot. Bro, I'll tell you what, we could fly through these next two fights. I mean, it's pretty simple. Mike Davis is going to win this fight over Mitch Ramirez here. I'm one of the biggest Mike Davis fans out there. I have not loved his inactivity in the sport. I do think that you can kind of get, when you're put on ice for a little bit and you're not acclimated to competition, whether it's grappling or whether it's an MMA fight, like, you could be at a disadvantage if somebody's been more active than you, especially when the skill sets are similar. I don't think the skill sets are similar here at all. I think that Mike Davis is clearly the better striker. I also think that he has tremendous takedown upside, and I actually think that he has sneaky submission upside. This guy, Mike Davis, hits really, really hard. His combinations are excellent. His wrestling is phenomenal as well, and I think that finding the knockout at times is a little bit more difficult than just taking him down and getting a quick submission. So I actually think that he's going to submit Mitch Ramirez here. Obviously, if he doesn't knock him out before that, but I do think that the Mike Davis via submission is an interesting line. I haven't even looked at it. When I made my sheet, he was a minus 900. He's clearly ballooned beyond that. Priced at 9,800, it's just, do you have the salary for him? I love Mike Davis in this matchup. It's a winnable fight. Thiago Moises really just destroyed Ramirez. I mean, he leg kicked the shit out of him, took him down, and I think that Mike Davis can do the same exact thing. Career worst performance previous against Faraz Zaim, but I think that Mike Davis gets back in the win column, and the UFC knows what they're doing, man. The UFC likes Mike Davis, and Davis's management is doing the proper thing and getting his feet back underneath him. And I think that Davis will go out here and win inside the distance, but the submission is my sneaky call, Jason. And I think 9,800. If you have the salary, find it, because I think that he's going to pick up a finish inside the first two rounds.
Plus 240 to win via submission.
That's not even that good. But I mean, he is a minus 1,000 favorite.
Yeah, we hear you talking about getting somebody this high. I mean, you're just going to have to pay a lot in terms of getting him. Maybe it could be a parlay piece of just taking him to win inside the distance. To get that number, I want to say it was minus 165 to win inside the distance in terms of that one. Then our opening fight of the matchup fight card is a female matchup. We got Fatima Kline taking on Melissa Martinez. Martinez is a plus 700 betting underdog. Kline minus 1,200. She's 9,900 on DK, $23 on FanDuel. Martinez, $6,300 DK, and $8 on FanDuel. Kline, the former CFFC strawweight champion. She lost her UFC debut, but did get a win in her second UFC fight there back in January. Martinez, same exact situation. Lost her UFC debut, and then she is coming off a win in her most recent matchup.
Yeah, Martinez is an interesting fighter, right? Against most women's MMA fighters, I would be tempted to pick Melissa Martinez because of her striking. Pretty good footwork, pretty good kicks. Good evasiveness. I just think that the big glaring hole in her game and biggest weakness is her grappling. And I think that a fighter of Fatima Kline's caliber, when I made the sheet minus 1,200, priced at 9,900, I think that she's going to strike enough and then get a takedown. And then she's going to work towards a submission finish or a TKO on the mat. I would like to say it's a submission submission on the mat. But I think that Fatima Kline can strike and can compete on the feet, but it's not the easiest path to victory. I mean, choose the path of least resistance, and that has taken Melissa Martinez down, who I know has been working on a ground game, but you can't come to a black belt level in a camp from now. You know what I mean? So I think that Fatima Kline's submission ability is clearly beyond anything Melissa Martinez has for her. If this stays on the feet, though, don't be surprised the fighter at 6,300 does enough in a loss if it goes 15 minutes. I don't foresee that happening. I'll play around with some lineups to see what Melissa Martinez looks like as like a complete punt play. Don't even care if she loses. Just do enough in a loss. Maybe I can put like 9,000 options in there and still have a ton of salary. You know what I mean? So I'll play with it, but I don't think that she survives 2 rounds against Fatima Kline. I think that there is a clear gap in skill, and I think there's levels to this game. So Fatima Kline's on a different level. Give me her at 9,900 as a minus 1,200 and beyond favorite.
Yeah, always hard to roster female fighter at 9,900. I mean, it's just because of what the ultimate history is there. But yeah, Kline is going to be the pick in terms of that one. Before we get a list of questions, we'll give our straight up fight picks. In the main event, I'll go underdog number 1, Derrick Lewis.
I'm going to go with Tallison Teixeira.
Give me a Bonfim in the co-main.
Thompson for me.
Underdog number 2 in Calvin Kattar.
Calvin Kattar.
Morgan Charriere.
Charriere.
I'll go Petrino. Give me Tafa. Curtis. I'm going to go Jake Matthews, just hoping that he is going to lace up these wrestling shoes.
Okay. I'm going to go Chidi and Njokuani.
Moura. Nzechukwu. Davis. And Kline. Get some question here from Discord before we get out of here. If you do got any questions, line those up in the YouTube chat right now. First question was value plays underneath AK and a core 3 on DraftKings. So when I look at the value plays underneath AK, Calvin Kattar, does stick out to me. Then I think it's really after that, it's kind of high upside when you talk about, if they go out there and get the win, that they would score well. I mean, I look at someone like a Walker, if he can get the fight to the ground and maybe submit Njokuani. Landwehr, I mean, I think that even though, to me, Morgan's a better mixed martial arts, do wonder about, hometown scorecard. We both know why you would take Derrick Lewis. And I know you mentioned Stephen Thompson as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're aligned in most of like the picks. And I think if you and I made lineups, like our exposures would be pretty similar because we're targeting the same fighters in the underdog spots that we think have good chances of winning. Or if they win, do they score well? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that we're aligned with our mindset and our game theory, if you will. It's just, do they pull it off? And you texted me saying that the dogs are barking, and I think that it's very tempting to get behind some of these dogs. It's just I'm trying to navigate where I don't think there's a trap. And, like I'm stepping over the traps right now, and I'm trying not to get caught up in it. And I'm excited to see if we're right or wrong on some of these matchups.
Let's get over to, by the way, the core 3 on DraftKings. So I think when you're looking about these 9,000 options, I think if you can find a way to get to Mike Davis in 9,800, I'd like to get to him.
Okay.
But then I see pros and cons of everyone at 9,000. What if Kline doesn't get a stoppage? How the hell does she pay off that price tag at 9,900? That's the first thing that sticks out to me. Petrino at 9,600. Okay. You talked about, feeling like he goes out there and gets a knockout victory. Moura, you mentioned about the fact of she hasn't shown she can score the high points. Bonfim, if he gets the takedowns, he might pay off that price tag. Curtis, he's got to win by finish. And, of course, Teixeira. I mean, Davis and Teixeira may be 1-2 in the 9K range.
I'm with you. I mean, I have concerns about other fighters. If I'm looking at my projections, I have Teixeira and Davis as the highest projected fighters. I'm more in love with Petrino than you are, and I understand the concerns, but I mean, look at Lane's losses. I think a knockout is, honestly, it's gonna happen. It's inevitable.
Yeah, to me, what does Petrino look like? But like you talk about a core three, for me, I would probably go Mike Davis. I would put Calvin in there. The third one is where I get kind of tough because I could look at someone like a Charriere as maybe more of a safer play. Njokuani, just because of what he's done. Yeah, I'd probably go Njokuani at that third spot just because of what he's done so far in heavyweight.
Yeah, I don't think people like my pick three because for me, I'm liking Chidi and Njokuani more than most people. I like Calvin Kattar, even though he's on a 4-fight losing streak. And then, I mean, I like Petrino. And I like Petrino only because of who he's fighting. And I understand there's concerns, but I think this is a layup.
Let's go to our Sam's. He's got his usual questions here. Best top plays. I think I'd probably look at Mike Davis as the top play. I mean, basically a lot of similar names that we brought up previously. Live dogs, best decision, odds fighters. To me, live dogs, I look at Calvin Kattar. I look at Nate Landwehr. I look at Derrick Lewis, Stephen Thompson.
Yep. I mean, technically, Jake Matthews, too.
Yeah.
I think Tuco Tokkos, if he gets his grappling going, clearly. Valter Walker, too. I mean, the people that I'm really not interested in, Ramirez, Martinez, Lane, Murphy, and Griffin for the most part. Outside of that, I mean, a lot of the underdogs I can see with Pats.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of fights I think are going the distance, the co-main event, I would throw in there. I think Kattar, Garcia's got a high probability going the distance. Landwehr, Charriere, Griffin, Curtis. And then I would also throw Murphy and Moura in there.
Yeah, great. I think you're correct on that. And I think the Garcia and Kattar over and going the distance are sneaky bets because everybody knows Garcia's on a KO streak, knocking out everybody. So recency bias is going to really affect those lines. And I think that the overs and the decision odds are the way to go in those fights.
Yeah, now I just want to look at what is the over 2.5 rounds on Calvin and
it might Garcia. Even be
the over 2.5 is plus 115.
Yeah, it's because
not bad.
Not bad. I mean, Garcia lunges in too. I mean, he got knocked out against Mahashate by a step back right hand. I can see Kattar doing that, you know. So it's like, but yeah, man, I'm excited. I'm very excited to see if we're correct about this stuff.
Best inside the distance fighters. I'll just kind of go down my list for me. Lewis, Teixeira, both of them. Petrino or Lane, more Petrino. I would say Tafa. I would say Njokuani. I could see him very well finishing there. I think you got to look at Njokuani and Walker. I think probably either one of those fighters gets it, then Mike Davis. And you probably got to throw Fatima Kline in there too.
Yeah.
Favorite parlays. I will tell you this, man. It's going to get you some great. Call me crazy. This is my crazy 3-fighter parlay. Derrick Lewis, Stephen Thompson, Calvin Kattar.
I don't hate it, man. I mean, and guess what? The best way to do that, Jason, is it's laddered. Where you're going to, if Kattar wins, okay, then the next matchup's Thompson. Okay, yeah, I hit 2 of my 3 legs. Am I crapping my pants? I might be. So maybe I'll hit the cash out button right before the Derrick Lewis gets knocked out.
You know what I'd probably, at that point, you know what I do?
You're going to hedge it?
I'm hedging my bet. I'm hedging it.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah. Let's see here. Jason and Pete specials. First fight of the night for me. I don't want to get to it all. It's a price tag situation. If I'm going that high, I'm getting the Mike Davis. I'm not getting Fatima Kline. And for you, it's the 8,200, 8,000 fight, which that's in Njokuani and Matthews.
And for this week, I'm uncharacteristically confident in Chidi and Njokuani.
I wish you weren't.
I know. I'm sorry.
I wish you were. But that's also me being hopeful that Matthews does lace up the wrestling shoes there. Top captains and MVPs. I'll tell you what. I think when you're looking at captains contests and MVPs, I think you have to look at Gabriel Bonfim. Yes, it's only a 3-round fight, but if he's going to truly go out there and win, you got to imagine it's about getting those takedowns in terms of that. Maybe Morgan Charriere is an under the radar captain MVP in terms of that. I mean, well, anytime I'm thinking captain MVP, I'm always looking at who are the grapplers.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a smart approach. I mean, if Bonfim goes out there and makes it look easy against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, I tip my cap to him. You know what I mean? Like, that's a lot of people tried and a lot of people failed doing that. So credit to him if he's able to do that. Going up against, you have Nate Landwehr and Morgan Charriere. I think that fight being in Landwehr's hometown, he might fight at a historic pace, even more so than he normally does, just because he's so amped up, which could result in either Charriere breaking or Charriere matching and overtaking. So I think the Charriere-Landwehr fight as a captain contest is a very, very sneaky call.
And Sam's Road to the Match Series, over, under 7.5. Give me the under.
7.5?
Yeah.
I'm going to go under as well, Jason. That's a little high.
Yeah, 12 fights. Get a question here from Forrest Daniels on YouTube. He says, who has the most to gain? Who has the most to lose at UFC Nashville?
Ooh, what a good question.
I mean, the most to gain, it's maybe an easy pick, but Tallison Teixeira. I mean, you're talking about it's only your second fight in the UFC, and now you're taking on a former title challenger, a guy that's got a name, a guy that universally people in the MMA community love. So if you can go out there and put on performance, you have a ton to gain in terms of that. If I wasn't going to say him,
I might say Steve Garcia.
Yeah, I would say him or Bonfim. One of the two.
Yeah.
In terms of most to lose, I think you gotta look at someone like a Derrick Lewis, a Calvin Kattar, Stephen Thompson.
Lauren Murphy is retiring regardless. And if she didn't say that, I'd probably say her, because like in women's MMA, it seems to really pass fighters up quickly. But she seems content with whatever the result is, which is a little dangerous when you step into the octagon.
That's odd that you see that happen, man. And look, we're in a sport that typically when you say you're retiring, it's not going to go well. I mean, that's just the way this sport works, but we'll see what happens there.
Jay, can I break some news to you?
Go ahead.
It's not MMA related. It is BKFC related.
I think I know what you're are you talking about the $25 million tournament?
Yeah, bro. You knew about this.
Yeah, they did a press conference today. Conor McGregor was he was Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I believe it's an open weight tournament. I believe
I have the stuff right here. I'll kind of just give a quick rundown. It will include, they're calling this a massive $25 million baddest man tournament, and it will kick off in March. It will include 32 fighters ranging from 185 pounds to 225 pounds and award a $15 million prize to the winner, with the runner-up earning $1 million. Granted, this is from MMA Fighting Instagram page.
That's legit. That's absolutely legit.
Yeah. And CEO David Feldman announced that the promotion will run a similar tournament for their women weight classes next year. And then they're talking about, in other news, Feldman announced creating of a fighter equity program for champions and long tenured BKFC fighters to become part owners of the company. Feldman then expanded on the equity program a little, explaining that it would be a tiered system of entry, with the top earnings champions who defend their titles 10 times earning up to $3 million. Who the hell is defending 10 times? Any fighter who wins a title wins the title and defends at least once will take $100,000 equity. And McGregor suggested that this is a major windfall. I mean, first place, $15 million. Second place, $1 million. Third and fourth, 500,000. 5 through 8th, 300,000. Ninth through 16th, 200,000. 17th through 32nd place, 100,000. And all alternates, $50,000. Holy shit. That is a lot of money.
Yeah, it makes you wonder where all this money's coming from. That would be my question. Let's end the show on this one. Samuel sent in a super chat. Samuel, I appreciate it, man. Highest leverage plays by then each salary tier. So if you look at a 9,000 range, I think Moura is definitely going to be, Moura and Kline are probably going to be your leverage plays in that range. Maybe Chris Curtis may have a little bit lower ownership. In the 8,000 range, I would probably say, why do I say Morgan Charriere? Maybe that leverage play in the 8,000 range.
Okay.
In the 7,000 range, I think it's Max Griffin.
I love this question, by the way.
It's either Max Griffin or Tuco Tokkos. I think those are in the 7,000 range. That's your leverage spots.
And then the 6,000 range.
Anyone not named Stephen
Mitch
Thompson.
Yeah,
I mean, I would say either Ramirez or Melissa Martinez.
Yeah.
I mean,
I love that question. That's a fantastic question. And
Yeah.
I think I'd agree with you. The 9,000 option is definitely Chris Curtis for me, Charriere for me, Max Griffin for me, and then Ramirez for me.
yeah. But, of course, the fight's going to go down Saturday. If you got any questions, maybe you're watching the show or listening to the show after the fact, you can hit those comments up in our YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit that thumbs up here on the video. Or if you want to slide in our Discord channel, that is totally free to join. Always great conversation going on there. Just if you got a question for myself or Pete, just tag us there. So we certainly do see it, as both me and Pete are very busy with our day in, day out schedule. So, we appreciate everyone who takes time to check out this show each and every week. Of course, be sure to hit up Pete's Patreon page so you get access to all the tools that Pete has to offer. And of course, we got other offers there that are in the show notes below. So that's going to do it for this episode of Fight HQ. We will talk to you next week as we're going to get you ready for UFC 318.